report, one I've been looking forward to for a couple weeks now after the Celtics, NBC Sports Boston hired Syracuse's own Drew Carter as play-by-play man for the road games this year. And do I have this right? You're going to be full-time next year covering all 82 or however many local Celtics broadcasts there are.
Yes, sir. That's right. Thanks for having me, Bobby. It's good to see you, man. It's been a while, and that is how it's going to go. So, road games this year. It'll be Mike's farewell season, which is, of course, the top line headline. That's the focus this year is Mike signing off after 43 seasons, which is what he'll begin against the Knicks on the 25th, and then after this year, after Mike steps away full time, then I'll be doing the entire slate. Which you're right, it'll be 82 games minus the Nationals, and then a first round series for sure, and then the National takes over to watch the Celtics win the finals. But we'll have the first round series.
So let's get into how that came together first, because I'm obviously curious too. Someone actually called me, Drew. I had the scoop. I should have asked you.
No way, dude.
Someone called me. Someone called me, and they were like, "Don't tell anyone," but they picked someone. It's Drew, and I'm like, Drew Carter? Like, I remember him.
Well, the person who called you was probably like, "Who is this?" It's Drew
Yeah,
Carter?
that's what they were wondering.
Question mark? Yeah.
So yeah, I obviously, we went to Syracuse together, class of 19. In Drew's case, class of 20. But how did this come together? You've been working at ESPN, and a couple other opportunities since graduating, and at 25, right?
26.
26, a year older than me.
I want everyone to get that right. And I said this to Forsberg, like, you're going to come after me for my age. At least get it right. I'm 26.
Well, I thought you were my age, but you got a little bit of experience on me.
Old man compared to you, Bobby. Old man.
So how did it come together, Drew?
So when I left in 2019 at Syracuse, I went straight to Birmingham, Alabama. I did local news for 2 years down there, covering mostly Bama and Auburn football. And you know how it is at Syracuse, Bobby. I mean, I think people who want to be on the air tend to think they should do either local news or minor league baseball. Like if you want to call games, you go over here and you go to like middle of nowhere and do short season single A baseball, which I did do, but when I was a student. Or you go to local news and move to like Twin Falls, Montana and cover, mostly high school sports. So I didn't really want to do either of those things. Of course, I tried to, I wanted to break the mold a little bit, I guess. And I also think that with the way modern media works now, you don't really have to do either. I think, you're a great example, Bobby, like what you do now and you grind on the digital channels. That wouldn't have been a possibility 20 years ago. Right. So I think that's kind of why that, exists, that idea that you got to do one or the other. That's a long way to say I didn't really want to do local news necessarily because calling games is my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
But with the way that the schedule works for minor league baseball, when you graduate, a lot of the seasons have started. So I was kind of like, what, I've done baseball all 3 summers in college, haven't really had a summer off at home since I was in high school. So I'm just going to chill for a little bit. And then in that summer in July, I got an email from a news director in Birmingham, Alabama. And I was, to be honest, I was thinking probably not. Like I was ready to read it, say thanks and move on. But then I did read it and he said, we're a top 50 market. We cover big time college football. We're an aggressive sports team. Like we're growing at a time when other sports departments are shrinking. So I gave it a shot and I talked to some people who I really respect. I said, do you think I should do this? Even though I want to do play-by-play full time. And they said, yeah, it sounds like a good opportunity. So I did that for 2 years, got a chance to do some freelance play-by-play to like keep that tool fresh or whatever. I actually did some UAB women's basketball on conferenceusa.tv, which actually charges a subscription fee, $7.99 a month, which to me is, no offense to conferenceusa.tv, but it's more insane than them charging me for this coffee at this hotel. Like hotels should have free coffee. Yeah. If I'm ever president of the United States, that's a rule. Everyone has free coffee. There you go.
And free Conference USA.
Free Conference USA. So anyway, I did that, and I only bring that up to say, like, after the pandemic hit, there were some freelance opportunities that kind of dried up, I think, for a lot of people in a lot of industries.
Right.
So I was just looking for any way to stay fresh with play-by-play. Fast forward to 2021 summer, I had recently done an audition at ESPN in studio because I had done the local news thing. I'd done a lot of studio in college. So I wanted to, keep doing that as well. So I did the studio audition for ESPN, went well. They hired me full time to do play-by-play in studio. 2 years at ESPN. I mean, we're going to talk about how the Celtics are a dream. ESPN is a dream as well. I was a kid who would watch SportsCenter falling asleep and then wake up and watch the same reruns again. Like ESPN was burned into my dad's TV in the living room. So working at ESPN is awesome. I'm grateful I can continue to do that with the Celtics, but the Celtics have a priority, as it's called. So they're the top thing. And then ESPN will kind of fill in the schedule with some other games. So I'm actually in Ohio right now. Sounds like they're tailgating this Miami, Ohio homecoming game 25 minutes away here in Hamilton, Ohio. So that's today, Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern on ESPNU if you want to watch.
Yeah, tune in. So the NBC, when do they come into play? You're doing ESPN for a couple of years.
Yeah.
College mostly there. What led that? Because obviously, we knew last couple of years Gorman mostly doing home games. I felt like he was going to do it forever after a certain point, kind of like our guy Boeheim up at Syracuse. You just reach a point where it's like, all right, just keep it rolling. You've done it forever. You've done it better than anyone. So just you'll say when you retire. And this season comes along, and he decides it's going to be his final. So I'd have to imagine you were pretty shocked when you heard that this was an opportunity that was possible.
Bobby, it's the same feeling as when I realized that, sports broadcasting can be a job. It's like it's a total shock. And then you still don't even think it's possible for a long time until it is, basically. And for this, I didn't think it was real until I was sitting next to Scal on a stool on the floor at Madison Square Garden. And they're like, all right, here we go, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And even then it feels pretty surreal. But the way that this came about is, in the spring, I heard that, Mike was going to step away after this season, and they were looking to bring somebody in to do the road games and then eventually take over the full slate. But, at that point, I don't think it was that specific. I think we just thought, and when I say we, I mean my agent, Kevin, and me, we kind of thought they were bringing someone in. We didn't know exactly what the role would look like. But how could you not want to be part of the Celtics and be part of NBC Sports Boston? So even though, to be candid, Bobby, neither of us expected it to happen, we're like, we might as well put our best foot forward here. So I got the meeting with Kevin Miller and Paul Lucy from NBC Sports Boston. Kevin is a guy kind of oversees the station, and Paul Lucy is the producer of the broadcasts. And so I work with him on basically a nightly basis now. So I interviewed with them, really liked them, hit it off, thought it went well, stayed in touch with those guys. And then about a month later, they hit me up and said, do you want to come in for an audition? Or I think it was probably, can you come in for an audition? Because obviously you'd want to.
Yeah.
It was funny. I responded and I was like, all caps, like, yes, thank you. Like, I'm so excited. And my agent hit me and he's like, hey, it's really good that you're excited, but like,
don't put 50 exclamation.
Yeah, maybe act like you've been here before, pal, But it's funny, though. I think that it kind of illuminates just how excited I am about this, and frankly, how much gratitude I have and how much surprise I have, to be honest, that I did end up getting offered the job. So anyway, I went in for the audition. They didn't pull it after my ridiculous email. Went great. Scal and I had an awesome time. Scal was great, man. He's like super supportive, and he has been from the jump. And I think it would have been easier for him to think, hey, look, I've worked with a legend ever since I started doing this for the Celtics, and I want to bring in this kid. Like, F this.
Yeah.
Bring me somebody else. But he didn't do that at all. He was amazing. So audition went really well. It was great. We got to, do it live in the NBC Sports Boston studio in a podcast room for Game 6 of the second round series against the Sixers.
Oh, okay. That's a good one.
I don't even have to specify second round because everyone knows if it's the Sixers, it's the second round because they're not making it past there. So did the audition and it went awesome. Stayed in touch with everybody throughout the summer. Had a meeting with Rich Gotham, the president of the team. And at that point I was thinking, hey, look, this is maybe going to happen because figured there can't be that many people meeting with that guy. He's a busy dude, and he was great as well, very down to earth, and we hit it off. And then a couple weeks after that, they offered the job. But to be honest, Bobby, like I had just re-signed at ESPN, and I'm full time there.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if it would work out, and ESPN thankfully gave the green light, and they were awesome throughout the entire process. And it went basically right up to the buzzer, man. We're talking like it was a D White Eastern Conference Finals-esque buzzer beater, like because the season was about to start and we wanted to figure it out, and thankfully all the pieces fell into place in time.
Yeah, and you didn't expect to get it going in. You just wanted to try out and see how it went.
I mean, are you kidding me? Like it's the Celtics. Like how
Yeah.
many people have done play-by-play for this team? It's nuts. And I don't know, man. That's why, I've talked about this before, but I do feel like some nerves and a little bit of pressure. I mean, think about it. Imagine how Mac Jones felt the first time he started
Right.
after Tom Brady was here. I guess Cam Newton, but then Mac Jones. Like both those guys had to replace a legend. And that's kind of what I feel like I'm doing. And I think the key is not trying to be Mike because there's only one Mike, and I understand that. So, but it is crazy to think, because who wouldn't want this job? So I feel really lucky, honestly.
Well, don't in your third season, don't pull a Mac Jones. Whatever you do.
Yeah, you think they're gonna get rid of the producer? Sorry, Paul. Paul is gonna like retire or get fired or something, and then they're gonna have like I don't know.
There's no comparison. Yeah,
somebody who's never seen a TV game ever before, they're gonna produce.
Yep.
And then I'm gonna be ruined.
They're gonna bring in the equivalent of Bailey Zappi. You guys are gonna step in and do one half each.
Zappy hour, baby.
What was it like meeting Mike? I don't know if you've met him before, but what was it like meeting him for the first time? I know obviously you want to kind of prioritize him this year and make this all about him in his final season. What was it like meeting him for the first time?
I really like that guy, Bobby. Like if I didn't work with him at all, or if I weren't charged with trying to succeed him one day, even if that weren't the case, I would still really like him because he's just a super cool dude who's very nice. And despite his, status and his history as one of the best to ever do this, he is extremely humble and like has no ego. And so same thing I said with Scal applies to Mike. I mean, I think even more so, like it would have been easy for him, I think, to be like, are you kidding me with this guy? Like I've been doing these games longer than he's been alive. But he hasn't been that way at all. In fact, he's been incredibly supportive and he's given me some good advice. He actually gave me some advice before the Wizards game the other night, or the Hornets game the other night. Just a heads up, like when you're watching the action from your vantage point, it's going left to right, but then on the Jumbotron and on the program monitor, it's going right to left because the camera's on the other side. So it kind of throws you off. It takes a little bit to get used to. So he gave me the heads up on that. We had a good conversation when he and his wife Terry were driving the other day, and they gave me some great advice. And honestly, man, that's probably the most important relationship for me, is first of all getting to know Mike really well and trying to learn from him, and then also getting his stamp of approval. I really, really want the fans to enjoy our broadcast when Scal, Abby, and I are working together, but truthfully, the most important approval to me is from Mike because, that's his chair and it has been for 40 plus years. So I want him to think that I'm doing a good job. And so far he's given me every opportunity to, get close with him and learn from him.
Yeah, he's the best. He's as good as it gets at that spot. And stepping in next to Scal, I was interested how that was going to go because obviously, so Brian Scalabrine, you grow up watching the NBA. You remember the 2008 Celtics and his post-game speech. And
in 50 years, I'm going to be the MVP.
And I love Scal. I think he knows the game in and out. I think he explains it well. I think he's great in that color role. But he's a lot. he's a big personality. Yeah. What was it like? Yeah, I know you did the tryout with him and, just stepping in there with him. And you said, he was just very gracious and welcoming you into that spot. But one thing I think you've done a great job with so far is I think really accentuating Scal and just kind of bringing out the best in him, like really just picking his brain on the ins and outs of the NBA, playing, whatever it might be, because he does have a lot to offer in that spot. And, as great as you've been calling the games, I think you've really formed a pretty solid connection with him, in just 2 games.
Well, thanks for saying that, Bobby, and I appreciate that you pick up on that because, to me, the play-by-play guy is doing a good job when the analyst has the chance to shine. It's a lot like an offensive lineman or a referee in football. You're doing your job well when nobody's talking about you.
Yeah.
So I remember, and apologies for the Syracuse reference, but we're sitting here talking like it's just you and me. So I'm going to make a Syracuse reference. Mike Tirico is one of the best guys to come through the Newhouse School ever, really. And he's still at the top of his game. And so he came in when I was a student. And I remember what he said, on radio, a lot of the time the play-by-play guy can sort of be the star or the main character because you can't see what's happening. So the play-by-play guy is charged with painting the word picture and helping you be able to, close your eyes and kind of visualize the game.
Mm-hmm.
In TV, we can all see it. So quite frankly, the analyst is the star. And to be honest, our director, Jim Edmonds, his job is more of a starring role than mine. He enhances the viewer's experience more than anyone because he's choosing which shots you see. And same thing with Paul, he's choosing what we talk about. So really, I'm just trying to distribute and set up Scal and Abby in the best way. And they're total pros, so that makes my job easy. And Scal, I'm with you, man. I think he's really good in that role. First of all, he's hilarious. And he's just himself on the air, which I think is super important. And so I have a good time just listening to him. But he also sees the game at an extremely high level. I think maybe even on a different level than your average NBA player. I think he kind of goes beyond that. And we had a good conversation a couple nights ago after the Knicks game at MSG. We went out, we got pizza because it was late and it was New York. So we went out and grabbed a couple slices.
Like $1 slice or something a little higher level?
A couple dollar slices. Scal picked it up because I'm still new. I think eventually that's not going to happen. But yeah, a couple dollar slices. Then he got a salad and a sub. It was Joey Chestnut. I mean, he was putting it
he
down.
Is 6'8", 6'8"-ish.
It was impressive. And he worked out 2 or 3 times that day. I see him at the gym at every hotel we go to. But anyway, we went out and we were talking and he was telling me kind of how his brain works and how he visualizes things and that applies with hoops. So when he sees things one time, it's kind of seared into his head, but he's got to see it. He's a visual learner,
Yeah.
But once he sees it, he gets it and he can kind of bookmark it and then we'll go back on the replay and he'll know what's coming. I think he's a really, really sharp dude and it manifests itself in a way that's perfect for doing color on a TV broadcast. So I think he's great, man. And, I've been a fan of him for a long time, since he was a player. And I think he's awesome on the air and he's even better as a partner. He's been extremely, extremely supportive. I'm trying to, move to Boston right now. And he's like, hey, man, if you ever need to crash, let me know.
You and Drew Holiday, but maybe you and Drew can become roommates, the 2 Drews.
Yeah, Drew or Jaylen Brown is apparently just moved into a pretty nice place because he's got that new payday. So maybe I can crash with one of them. But Scal has been great. And same with Abby. Abby's been super cool. And she's kind of shown me the ropes of where to go for shoot around and, where to go for the team plane. And Scal's been the same way. Obviously, we talked about dropping a pin for where to go for the team plane. So
That's
those two, and then Paul and Jim and Kevin from NBC Sports Boston, they've really made me feel at home. And obviously I'm still new here, so I'm still learning. So I appreciate that.
That made me think, who was your favorite play-by-play broadcaster growing up and what made you want to do this?
Man, growing up, I mean, obviously Mike Breen's an easy one. And I got the chance to meet him at MSG the other night, and that was pretty neat. He sat down for a while and we chatted. I think my favorites are Jason Benetti, who is a Syracuse guy and does Chicago White Sox games and then calls college football and some hoops for Fox. And he's everywhere. If you watch baseball specifically, but really any sport you'll end up seeing him. He's done some Olympic stuff at NBC. He's incredible. He's so smart, and he's actually like my biggest mentor, I would say. He was the guy who kind of convinced me I should try play-by-play in the first place and gave me some advice when I was first starting and absolutely horrible at it. Like I would go into Sadler Hall study rooms and try to bootleg broadcast of an NBA game and call it into my garage band and send it to him. And
That's funny.
he would send me advice. That was the first time I ever tried it. And so really, I don't think without Jason, I don't know if I ever would have tried it, to be honest with you. So basically owe him everything. And then I think Mike Tirico is really solid, who I mentioned earlier. He is so smart. Like, and he clearly preps in a way that's really effective. To me, he's mastered that art. Like if you listen to Sunday Night Football, they do the thing where he goes, "Let's meet the Chargers offense." And then they all come and say their name and where they went to school. And sometimes we get some funny ones like Ball So Hard University or Tony Gonzalez doing his Tony Montana impression. And then they come out and Mike always has a note that he's clearly prepped for right after that, like missing 2 of their starting offensive linemen, or they've allowed 14 points per game over the last 4, whatever it is. Like he's always got something. And he's like a maestro, dude. And he just knows what's coming next at all times in a job where really at its core, you don't know what's coming next. And so, he obviously can't predict the plays unless the NFL is actually scripted, but he can't predict the plays, but he does everything right in terms of predicting what he can control. So I think Mike is just really, really good at that. And then Ian Eagle. So 3 for
That's a
3
good
on
one.
naming Syracuse guys, but Ian to me is so clever. Like he makes really subtle references that he must work on beforehand. I've actually never asked him this. He's been a big mentor of mine, but I've never asked him this. But he has lines that like he must have written down on his board that are just so good. So like Nathan Mensah, I'm just thinking of San Diego State. Nathan Mensah, who actually played against the Celtics for the Hornets for like 2 minutes at the end of that game. He was on that San Diego State team that went to the championship. And he said, "A smart play from Mensah." And I'm sure like 90% of the audience didn't even pick up on it, but Mensa is like the society for people with IQ of above 140 or whatever. So, when he saw Mensa, he's like, "Oh, baby, here we go." Like we get to drop something in like that. There's another player on San Diego State named Seiko, and Seiko is a watch brand. And so, and it was spelled the same way. And so he goes, "Seiko on time." And like a bunch of people probably didn't even catch it. And then Sule Boom, a lot of people saw this. Sule Boom from Xavier, he makes a big play and Ian goes, "Boom goes the dynamite." And so stuff like that, like the Pritching Hour, I think like a lot of that stuff, like preseason P, that kind of comes from watching and listening to Ian. Because I think that really enhances the experience for a viewer when they hear something that makes them laugh, or if they're like, "I got that reference." It's like in the Avengers when they're like, "I understood that reference." If someone can do that, I think it makes them feel like they're kind of part of the show, like they're in the mix, which
So,
they are.
so that's part of like your preparation process is you'll kind of come
Sometimes,
up with things like that.
but you can't force it, and I think that's
Yeah.
what makes Ian so good is he never does. And he has his own catchphrases like "Man's Jam" and "Rack Attack," and I hope one day I'll have general catchphrases like that. But he'll tell you that they kind of just happen organically.
Well,
So
it worked out well because I remember you were talking about like some Pritchard nickname stuff before the game, and then he
yeah,
comes
you were
out and
there.
has
I told you.
and he comes out and has the game he did. So that's where it does happen naturally. I mean, if he was 1 of 5, you weren't going to be able to use it.
Right. I know. Like, so a great example of that is in the Toy Story game I called. To infinity and Bijan would have been the best touchdown call I could have possibly asked for. And like 5 different people told me to say that. Like a guy working on the broadcast, I got a couple of texts like, "Hey, dude, I got this great line for you, to infinity and Bijan." Like, "Thanks, pal. I've heard that. Got it written down already, but thank you." And if he had scored, it would have been the best. And unfortunately, he didn't. So couldn't use it, but I did manage to squeeze it in later on in the show when we showed a graphic with his stats. But yeah, it's got to happen naturally.
Well, that's what I love, for you coming up, and our guy Noah Eagle who did the Nickelodeon broadcast for the NFL games. It's more fun now. I feel like you can have fun with it. You can kind of make it your own. I think people are looking for different things out of play-by-play guys now. Like, there's still kind of the fundamentals of it, but
Yeah.
people listen to podcasts. Like, they want to hear banter, they want to hear some conversation, they want to, get something different out of the broadcast. I feel like than people might have like a couple of decades ago, where it was a little more straight, a little more, kind of buttoned up. And now, like, I feel like the new class of play-by-play guys like you and Noah and some of these other guys coming out of Syracuse, of course,
Mhm.
are doing, which I think is awesome. And I think that's kind of been a breath of fresh air for a lot of Celtics fans here who, might not have known you coming in, but like hear you a couple of times and are like, oh, this is a little different.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. But with that being said, the play-by-play guy's never the star, and
Right.
so the last thing I want to do is to be up there doing a stand-up routine, during a during an NBA game because people are there to watch the game. Um, and I do think, it's interesting you say that, Bobby, because I said that Mike is Mike and no one's going to be him, so I just have to be myself. But at the same time, I don't want it to be jarring for people
Yeah.
because I do think our styles are different. Obviously, we sound different. I don't have a Boston accent, so that might be jarring for people
You might have to
initially.
develop one.
Right. Well, it was okay. Like Tommy to Scal, like there you lose that Boston
Where's
accent.
Kemba Walker when you need him?
Yeah, right. And then Mike to me, like, so now kind of sad. Maybe we can get Abby to develop a Boston accent or at least do an impression. And so I don't want it to be because I know people are very comfortable with Mike, obviously, and 40 plus years that's kind of what you earn is comfort level with the viewer. So I don't want it to be jarring for people, and I could probably do a better job of being a little more minimalist and maybe saying less because Mike's really good about that. Is
Oh yeah, that's what he's best at.
he doesn't say
Just
too
letting the
much.
moment talk. Yeah.
He gets in and he gets out. And I do have a bit of a radio background, but I've been doing play by play on TV now for a few years, and that's something I'm always trying to remember. Is like, hey, if you don't have something that's going to enhance this, if there's no caption here that's going to educate or entertain at all, and you're just talking to talk, you just shut up and hit the cough button. No one needs to hear my opinion really. So that's one thing I'm trying to work on, and of course Mike is the best guy to learn how to do that from him.
Well, we're gonna get your opinion on this year's team. Talk a little Celtics, what a season to come in with this team that they have, with what they're trying to do this year, and we'll do that real quick just after this.
Into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, opening night is Wednesday. We'll be down there. Drew, you're heading down as well too to take it in. Porzingis, Holiday, all of these new bench guys in here, new coaches. Just a massive transformative offseason. I don't think anyone could have imagined. I mean, the way last year ended for this team, coming off East Finals where they go down 3-0, a lot of turmoil going in the last year. I mean, Drew, it's been the complete opposite. Just the mood around this team last year, of course, given how that year started, versus this year where you have ownership, Paul Pierce, Rondo's at the facility yesterday. Everyone's saying how much this reminds them of 2008 going into that year. Even, some of my co-hosts here, like they've talked about how this Porzingis preseason just reminds them of that little New England tour Kevin Garnett went on when he arrived here. And I don't want to overdo that. And I feel like we're getting to a place where that's becoming a little bit of kind of a cliche storyline going into this year. Oh, this is 08 all over again.
Yeah.
And of course, that's just kind of building things up in a way that's going to be hard to meet. But when you look at the talent on this team, You're talking about that kind of special thing being possible here, and you've been pretty adamant. You said even before you got hired to this position, you really like this team's chances, and this is probably the team to beat in the NBA.
Yeah, it's a really good time to be jumping on board, and I hope there's still a seat on the bandwagon for me. Like I'll sit in the back, and I was kind of late to arrive here. But look, man, it's a heck of a glow up from last year. Of course, the depth is not what it was last season, or so we think. I mean, last year the team had more established depth, but this year I think we've already seen in the preseason some guys who maybe we didn't expect to play a whole lot or who didn't get chances last year will this year and probably make the most of them. Like Peyton Pritchard's a great example. Lemias Queta, I think, who's a two-way guy. Hopefully at some point maybe he'll get elevated because I think that guy should play every game, not just 50. But even if the depth has taken a hit in the offseason, losing Brogdon and Williams and Smart and excuse me, Time Lord, like even if the depth has taken a hit, like the top six are good enough that I think it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like the roster is constructed so well and it makes so much sense. It's not like Brad Stevens and the front office put together a fantasy team where you have a bunch of guys who are good on their own, but maybe not work together. Like this is a team that makes a ton of sense together. You think about the two big names they brought in, Holiday and Porzingis could fit in on any team because they're good shooters. Holiday, even though he's a point guard, doesn't have to dominate the ball. Porzingis is going to help you on both sides of the floor, even if his usage rate is like 15 or 20. But the thing is, he can do a lot more than that. So if you want to play him with the bench unit, I mean, he averaged 24 points per game last year. It was his best season in the NBA. I think the pieces just fit together really, really well. I think the vibe is awesome. It's funny you say that about, maybe it could be overblown. It feels like, oh, wait, I got a text from a friend yesterday who's from Boston. He said, I think a really underrated aspect of this season is how cool it is that Missoula's bringing back the former players. I'm like, dude, that's cool, but it's not underrated. Everybody's talking about that. Maybe I'm on Twitter too often.
Did you see Pierce is at the facility?
Yeah. Oh my God, Rondo's here. Like everyone's talking about it, but I think it's warranted. I think for a guy like Missoula, who's young and obviously got to the organization more than a decade after that 2008 team, I think it's cool for him to do that. And I think Joe is also a humble enough of a guy to know, like, maybe, we should bring in a Sam Cassell and a Charles Lee. And, I'm sure that's not his decision necessarily, but he's obviously on board, and there's no illusions about who the head man is, but, maybe he has a chance to, pick up some stuff from Cassell and Lee and the other guys on the staff and from former Celtics, like Paul Pierce and Leon Poe, and like Satch Sanders was here too. So there are a lot of guys that are coming in with a chance to maybe explain why 08 was so special. And I think the team is dialed in and really freaking good. And I can just tell you that the vibes, like traveling with the team a couple times here, the vibes have been off the charts. And I really enjoyed watching the second half in particular of that Hornets preseason game where, yeah, it's preseason and the game's technically not going to count. But like during the entire second half, everyone was smiling on the bench. Every time we took a shot of the bench, the entire team was smiling. They were up by 40 and there was a call. I can't remember who it was, but they went straight up, right? So verticality, it shouldn't have been a foul. Whistle blows. Everyone on the bench gets up and does this. Like he was straight up. It's like it couldn't be a more inconsequential play, but everyone was so involved and invested. It's been really fun to watch, man. I think this team likes each other a lot.
Yeah, and that's something I wondered how that would go going into the year, especially before the Drew trade, because you trade Marcus Smart, something I didn't love. But seeing Porzingis and what he's shown fresh and healthy to start this year, you're seeing him carry forward what he did a year ago, which I think many people wondered, is that just because he was on the Wizards? And I don't think many people saw him play last year, so you're more stuck with that impression of who he was in Dallas and how New York ended. And he's a whole new guy. Like I think one of the most interesting things I've heard this training camp, this preseason, has been him just talk about how like I was ignorant. I didn't care about anything when I got to New York, and that was a
Yeah.
long time ago now. Him coming into the league and taking the world by storm, but now getting to see him fulfill that potential in a different way here after injuries, after having to transform his game a little bit, look in the mirrors. He said, he's so bad at posting up years ago and comes off this great season he had. That's really cool to me. It's not Garnett, certainly. They're different players. It's a different kind of impact, different personalities, certainly.
Yeah.
But for this guy who came into the league and people wonder if he was going to change the sport, and it really didn't go the way I think many people thought it might after the breakout season he had to start there in New York. For him to be able to fulfill it in Boston, certainly, with this team, but also in a different way, kind of as like the third guy on the team and someone who's focusing on defense and shooting threes and all the rest. It's really interesting to me, and I love Smart. I really did. I think someone's gonna have to step up and fill that vocal leadership, especially when things go bad. And I don't know how often that's gonna go this year when the team has the roster it does. But there'll be a time where they need someone to step up, someone to be vocal, and they're obviously putting that on Tatum and Brown this year. More and more. But you just have all these new guys, and it does feel like a very like focused business like atmosphere. Whereas, the team last year, I thought those guys just had been together for so long.
Yeah.
It almost just got a little comfortable.
Well, it's funny you say that, Bobby, because we mentioned that in that second half against the Hornets about how everything you hear from the players and coaches is about how business-like training camp has been.
Yeah.
Which gives you a chance to have fun when you're crushing somebody.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they might not be having fun in practice, but they save the smiles and joking around for when they're up 40 in the second half. Like Tatum has said that practices are, quote, hard. Can I
Yeah,
swear
go
on this?
ahead. We are on YouTube, baby.
Oh, yeah. Practices are hard as shit. It's been funny to see that quoted over and over again.
This is an NBC.
Yeah, right. Hard as expletive. Like, no, hard as shit is what he said. And so, yeah, I think the team is taking a business-like approach. It's like business in practice, party in the games, because I think they're going to have a lot of fun playing these games, man. They're really good. Like, and just to, emphasize what I was saying about how well they fit, we've got stats from Second Spectrum. Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis were both in the top 10 last year in terms of efficiency attacking closeouts. Drew was 7th, Porzingis was 8th, and that's points per possession on a play where they initiate against a closeout. So it's essentially like as a secondary ball handler, right? Like Tatum or Brown will drive and create, kick it. Porzingis will catch it. Holiday will catch it, either shoot against the close or drive against it. It just makes a lot of sense. And also on the other side of the floor, you pair Holiday and Derek White together. Good luck. Good luck. Like Marcus Smart's a defensive player of the year a couple of years ago for this team. And I think their perimeter defense is better now. Just to be honest, like those guys are amazing. They're bulldogs. Derek White blocks 2 shots per game as a guard. Like his instincts are insane. And Drew Holiday's a complete pit bull. And I would hate to have to try to score on him. Made the All-Star game last year in his 14th season. I think he had 10 years before All-Star appearances. He's as good as he's ever been. I honestly believe that. So the roster is just really freaking good.
Yeah, and White, he doesn't appear on the ESPN Top 100. He's
man.
Consummately overlooked in terms of his impact.
Yeah.
And it still kills me, that Game 6 moment, because they didn't go out and win Game 7 the next night or 2 nights later. That really would have gone down with some of the great Boston sports moments ever if they went on to, even just make the finals that year. So I'm looking forward to what he can bring. Holiday, you mentioned. That made this whole Smart thing make a lot more sense to me, too, because if you were picking anybody in the NBA to replace Smart, it'd be him.
Yeah, and it sort of makes you think that Brad Stevens can see the future. Like really see the chessboard, right? Because when did the Smart Porzingis trade happen?
Late June.
Yeah, and that was before Dame demanded a trade, right?
Yeah.
I think that was like a few weeks later when Dame wanted out of Portland. So I don't know if Brad dialed it up that way, but
that's I'm still wondering, because obviously you go out and get Lillard if you're the Bucks, but I wonder if any part of them was like, is Holiday gonna end up in Boston after this? Like, what a risk you take there. So that's going to be interesting.
Do you think they're looking around like, if we could have a redo button, maybe we would? Because this is the worst possible outcome for them when it comes to Holiday.
Well, they had to do it, right? Because Giannis is giving interviews and saying,
Yeah.
I don't know how long I'm going to be in Milwaukee. And
Right.
all of a sudden you're pressured to do that move. And I think Lillard's going to be great there. That's going to be a big question for Boston is how they guard that combination. But
yeah. But Bobby,
yeah.
they're the best equipped team in the NBA to do it,
I know.
with White, Holiday, and then Porzingis.
And Holiday knows them, right? Going against Giannis in practice every day. They just traded him, and obviously he didn't love that. So there's a little extra motivation there. I mean, that's like the thing you really love about this. But if you're looking at this team this year, obviously there's a lot of answers. There's a lot of things that can go right here. But if you have one question you're going to watch throughout the year and just one thing you're interested to see how it's going to play out, like what's your biggest question about this team?
Well, I think the easy answer would be who's going to start. That's been a hot topic of conversation. Frankly, I don't think it matters, and that's what pretty much everyone with the team has said, from Mazzulla to Horford. It just doesn't matter who starts. I think it might be based on matchups, and what's more important is who closes games, and I think that's even going to be more so based on matchups than who they're playing and who's playing that night. Like, you don't expect Al to play on back-to-backs anyway, so I don't think that's going to be as big of a storyline throughout the season as it is now. For me, I am excited to see who emerges in the regular season and earns minutes in the playoffs. Like, I think Pritchard in the preseason has obviously been incredible. I want to see what he does in the regular season and how that might translate into April, May, and hopefully June.
Right.
Like, will he be playing in playoff games? I think he's hit a point where, obviously it's preseason, so easy to say this now, but like, I think he's hit a point where he has shown that he could deserve that one day. Same thing with like Neemias Queta. I mean, this is a pretty nerdy
You're
answer.
excited about him.
Yeah, but like, who's going to be the third big man? That's not like something you'd see on First Take, like the Chiron.
They haven't done that yet, Stephen A.
Right. Cornette or Queta? Who should, like, Mad Dog Russo's going nuts. That's
what like, we do here at CLNS.
Right.
That's our thing.
That's why you do a great job. Like, that's not a sexy topic, but it is important, especially with Porzingis, who, of course, we know his injury history, and Horford, and he's almost 40, like, not going to play on back-to-backs. So you need depth in the front court. And that was the biggest thing about the offseason, where it's 99% good. If there's 1% where, maybe it could hurt you is the lack of depth in the front court. And we know Rob Williams, not exactly a picture of health, but it's better to have two centers whose health you're worried about than one. So that's the one thing is, can those guys stay healthy? And really that, like, I think that stuff is random and impossible to predict. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if Porzingis is actually more prone to injuries than somebody else. I mean, he's obviously huge, and maybe like his limbs or something. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. But the fact that they have options behind him, that's what matters, right? Yeah. So, like, if Queta can soak up some of those minutes, Cornette can do it again. Maybe like Brissett can size up and play some 4 and 5. That's where it's really important. I'm excited to see those guys.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest questions going into the year, and you did nail the Cornette contest. You got to see it.
I was so ready for that.
You called it right out. Does it work? You think it works?
Yeah, I do. I actually do. Like, I asked Scal that, maybe on the air, but maybe during a break.
Scal loves it.
It's genius, Bobby. And like, Luke Cornette is a really smart dude, so maybe it's not surprising that he's the one who came up with it. But if you're a shooter and all of a sudden you can't see the rim, that's got to affect you. Like, imagine trying to shoot with your eyes closed. Unless you're MJ at the free throw line, you're not going to be able to do that. And the one thing I do regret is I kind of wish I had called it the Eclipse, because I know that was like, so the Cornette contest is like the mainstream name. The Eclipse is like,
that's his name, right? That's what he called it.
I think so. And if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense because of what we were just talking about. If it prevents you from seeing the rim, it blocks the rim like it blocks the sun.
There's that great picture of Patrick Williams trying to shoot over it, and it really does show, like, from a good vantage point, what it looks like. And we'll be tracking the numbers again, I'm sure, this year on because it went pretty well to start last year. I love Luke. My favorite story last year, and I told it on here, they had just lost up 28 against the Nets, and it was probably their worst loss of the regular season last year. And we're in the locker room. Obviously, everyone's pissed. They're just kind of going their separate ways, and there's a big tray of like lemon desserts in the locker room. And everyone's pissed. No one's really going to grab them. And Mike Muscala goes up to them and tries one, and he's like, "Oh, this is pretty good." And I'm like, "Who made these?" He's like, "Luke." So Luke made this tray of, I think they were like lemon squares, or that's what we called them. I don't know what they were, but this
Lemon
whole
bars?
tray, whole tray of desserts. And he did it again later in the season. He made like some sort of chocolate dish later in the year. So Luke Cornett, he invents.
I just got this from the cafe when I had to pay for my coffee.
It's no Luke dessert, but
I know I'll have to compare it. It's funny, Bobby. Cornett was not very good in the preseason. I think he would admit that. He didn't get a chance to play a ton. But I do think it's been interesting to be like on social media and stuff and see everyone like crown Keita as like the best backup center.
Yeah.
I mean, Cornett was a pretty significant contributor during the regular season last year. So I'm interested to see how Missoula handles that.
Yeah, and they like him. They've developed him for years, and you just see how he's kind of acclimated to the system and the guys who play around him. He's got a different game, though. Like, Cornett can test, obviously, but just sort of the way he plays offense. He's got a super interesting story. He's really, one of my favorite players I've gotten to cover here. Just like the way he came up and changed his game. He was obviously a shooter with the Knicks, and now he's kind of just like this handoff passing guy. I love his game. It's different. It's unique. It's a big personality. Were you at the gala when he hosted the game show?
I did not see that.
He did like, I don't think it was Price is Right. I forget what he was trying to imitate, but did a game show with O'Shea, Tatum, and I forget who else was up there. Maybe Peyton, but that's Luke. He's different. We're going to talk a little Syracuse before we get out of here because we have to. But real quick, want to shout out HelloFresh. It's a great season to try HelloFresh. If you don't cook, I love to cook, but if it's not for you, you can get meals done in under 15 minutes. Some of them here, they're quick and easy recipes. You're in and out, you're on the go. You might be tempted to go out to eat. You might be trying to figure out when to hit the grocery store and it catches up on you. Well, HelloFresh is going to bring meals right to your door. You get 50% off with free shipping when you go to HelloFresh.com/SteelinS50. Prepackaged ingredients. It's all fresh. It's customizable to your diet, to your schedule, when you want it delivered, how often. And there's dozens and dozens of great recipes that are changed constantly for each season. Some fall fresh meals as well. Great desserts here. And it's all pre-packaged, measured out with instructions. So if you're not used to cooking, they make it easy. HelloFresh.com/CLNS50. And of course, check out oddsr.com/Celtics as well. Get a 30-day free trial over there of their AI learning. They're going to help you make your bets. Green is good. Yellow, bet at your own risk on those. And red, don't do it. That's oddsr.com/Celtics. Go check them out. So I want to jump into some Syracuse memories, Drew, and there's no better way to do it than this, which popped on social media yesterday. This has me excited. How could it not? Carmelo Anthony's son touring and potentially going to Syracuse. He'd have to wear the 15, right? I know he's wearing one there. Break out the 15. Let him wear it if he's gonna go.
I should know this, Bobby, but is 15 retired?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they did it a year or two ago.
Yeah, I think they could probably dust that one off for a little Mellow. How cool? Can we see that photo again? By the way, the script jersey is just it's
unbelievable.
Good. That's like
I need one.
That's Pearl Washington era Syracuse stuff. I have a shirt that has after Pearl passed away. They had a Pearl Washington Day, and I have a shooting shirt that says Pearl in that Syracuse script, and it's one of my prized possessions. And I'm sure Mike actually called some Pearl Washington games, or maybe
he used to do the Big East.
Yeah, I know I think that was the same era. So that tells you, I mean, Mike's been doing this for a long time, and that those are some great memories. But yeah, man, for Melo's son to go to Syracuse would be pretty sick. I don't even care how good he is. Like, he can play 3 minutes a game, but I'll jump so far on the bandwagon if he goes to Syracuse, because that guy is such a legend.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued. They have some good. Jesse Edwards was awesome last year. Bummed he's gone, but they have a pretty interesting roster between Judah Mintz and Autry getting started. I've talked to pretty much all the Syracuse guys in the NBA, Grant and O'Shea and all the rest, and they're all really excited to see him get this opportunity because they loved him. You know, he was kind of the players' coach per se there behind Boeheim, who's obviously just ripping all the players.
He's not a players' coach.
So yeah, it's exciting to see him get his opportunity. I think it was time on the Boeheim front, and it's probably a little overdue to make that transition. But you're getting a fresh voice, no more zone, which is going to be interesting, and
maybe a little bit of both. Maybe a little man, a little zone.
And I think that's smart. You know, you run in zone the whole game, especially if you don't quite have the personnel for it. Just didn't go well the last couple of years. So it's intriguing, and you know they got tough schedule as always in the ACC. It's been a couple off years here. So I'm excited to see a nice refresh because it's been, even in our time there, not quite the same. I mean, we arrived at really an end of an era for the program.
We did. Bobby, were you a Syracuse fan growing up?
Yeah. So actually, it's interesting. So the biggest reasons I went to Syracuse were a local radio guy, Adam Kaufman, who went there, who was kind of the first guy I reached out to for advice when I was trying to get into the industry. But a guy you worked with as well, D. Lara, that I, got them on my radar. So, once they were on my radar as like a school for journalism that I could potentially go to, I really started getting to the basketball team, which was probably around like 15, 16-ish. But I definitely wasn't tracking like the Fab Mello days and Dion Waiters and whatever before that.
Yeah. So I asked that because, like you mentioned, when we were there, it was kind of the end of an era. When I was in high school and a little bit before, Syracuse was like a 1 or a 2 seed. It felt like every season.
Oh my God, that game against Duke.
Bench.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and CJ Fair, like, this is one of the best teams in the country every year. And then we show up and they're on the bubble every season.
But they were making the deeper March runs when they were there, which was cool.
So you got there the year after the Final Four run, right?
Yep. Yeah. So that was like kind of the entry point coming in, which was really cool. And then that next year wasn't as great. But there was that one game, John Gillen half-court shot against Jason Tatum and Duke.
Banks it in.
And that was really the first time Tatum came on my radar, because I think he had like 25, 10, and 5 in that game or something like that. Yeah. And so when he was on the Celtics radar later that spring, it was like, oh yeah, we got to watch this guy. He looked pretty good.
Yeah, he was great in that game. And to give you an idea of how much of a dork I was in college, at that game, I was not in the student section. I was sitting in the rafters making a play-by-play tape. So to help everybody visualize, this is what I was doing. I was sitting by myself up there, literally announcing the game into my phone like this. So
it's funny you say that you were doing that back then, because one thing, me and one of my friends, Taylor, who went there, and a couple of my other friends, back when CLNS didn't have this post-game show as we have it now, and I was still doing some work with them back then. I've been doing work with them since like 2016. We had like a call-in radio style show after Celtics games, and we did it after every game. It was kind of what the original version of this show was. And we would, after Celtics games, like, we'd go down one of the halls and throw the game on one of the big screens in one of the, classrooms. And then we'd, break out our mics and do a show after our post-game show, like 10, 11 o'clock in one of the halls there. And DPS would probably come around a couple of times and be like, get the hell out of here. But that's how we started. And, you were talking in your phone back then and calling games that way. It's fun to look back on. It's pretty cool how it all turned out.
Yeah, those are the good times, man. That's where it all started. That's the foundation. And, like, in all seriousness, we joke about Syracuse and people give us shit for going there and, being part of the mafia or whatever. But that's why, like, Syracuse is because
you just get to do it.
Yeah, you get to do it. And people who go there are psychotic about this shit. Like, who else? Like, show me someone at Northwestern who's doing what you just said. Like,
right.
I don't know, man. And sorry to take a shot at Northwestern, but not really, because they're the school that everyone always puts up with Syracuse. It's like, come on, there's no contest. It's like Celtics Lakers this year. It's not even close. Like Celtics are up here, Lakers are down there.
And it brings a lot of passionate people together too, which was I really loved it about it. I didn't love going to school there, and there were obviously some dark, cloudy, snowy days
On spring break. Yeah.
But the people there really, like, there was just great people, and a lot from Boston, a lot from New York, a lot from all over the world.
Yeah.
So I just loved my time up there. What was kind of your favorite lasting memory of just life there? Forget the broadcasting and the games and all that. Like, what was like just the kind of experience that stuck with you up there?
Pretty similar, actually. We had, so at WAER, the student run sports department at an NPR station, which is another reason that place is what it is. Like, you have a professional radio station with students running the sports department, calling football, men's hoops, and men's lacrosse games. So every Sunday night, we would have a sports department meeting at AER. And a bunch of us, after those meetings, we'd go out for dinner. And because it was Syracuse, we went to Chili's or Applebee's. Now, I shouldn't say it like that. Syracuse actually does have a good food scene, but we're
They
talking
do.
about
Not pizza though. Not crazy about the pizza up there.
no, but good Italian food, which is the weird thing, but just not really good pizza. So like we would have gone to like a Francesca's or a Postabilities, A, if we could have afforded it, or B, if they'd have been open Sunday at like 9:30 or 10. But we ended up loving our tradition of going to Chili's or Applebee's, and then maybe hitting Sonic on the way back and grabbing like a Blizzard, whatever their version of the Blizzard is. And those are still my best friends to this day. Like I'm in group chats with them, and I text them. And Mike Gorman, tennis guy, one of my best friends, Noah Eagle, who we've already talked about, he works for the tennis channel too. I did some tennis in college. Like this, it's a small industry, and so for them, to like, I think it's easy at Syracuse, and this, Bobby, there's so many people who want to do it there. It can kind of get competitive and maybe even cutthroat. And there are times where, you're competing with your best friends for the same opportunities. I feel really blessed that our class, the class of 2019, never felt that way.
Yeah.
Even though, like, I wanted to call every game, we never had any animosity toward each other because someone else got an opportunity. And we're still best friends to this day. And frankly, I think Noah deserves a lot of credit for that, because he was like the sports director at our station. I mean, there's no air quotes. That was his title. He was the sports director.
And he'll be doing Nets games this year, by the way.
Yeah, he's doing Nets and NBC. You can see him on NBC tonight, actually, Saturday night, primetime Big Ten package. Noah, who's Ian's son, like, he just was way, way more mature than I was in college, and still is way more mature than I am. And he handled that really well. And like his leadership, I think, is a big reason why we just became so tight, like everyone in that class, and why we still are to this day. So that, like, when I think back to my time at Syracuse, that's actually one of the first things I think of. Like, obviously I think of beating Duke at Cameron my senior year. I think of, calling a bowl game to win our 10th game my senior year. I think of lacrosse. Like, there are a lot of fun memories. But those are kind of the core stuff, is, becoming really close with the people in your class.
He's Drew Carter. We'll wrap it there, and we'll look forward to, I guess, what's going to be the first game. So not opening night, not the home opener against the Heat. The first game will probably be that Wizards game in Washington.
Right, which might feel like a preseason game, because
hey, look out, Jordan Poole at 41. Don't let him catch you off guard.
Dude, man, Jordan Poole might lead the league in scoring this year.
Oh, yeah, and everyone's going to go crazy. And
He'll definitely lead in shots.
Check him out on Twitter. You can find him there. What's your @? I don't have it in front of me.
It's @Drudel25, Drew DLE25. I made that when I was in middle school. Please don't give me too hard of a time. I should probably change it at some point. If anyone has any recommendations, let me know.
All right. We look forward to your first season here in Boston. We'll hopefully find you a place to stay in short time. And
he'll be like, you have some room back there, Bobby.
Yeah. All right, that's it. We'll hope to have you back later in the year, see how things go, and just talk some Celtics throughout. And really look forward to having you here. Congrats again, man. It's been awesome to just see you around and catch up again after probably 4 years apart. So looking forward to it, and come back here anytime on the Garden Report, CLNS Media.
Appreciate it.